this webinar is very much focused on the future of consolidation. What do you see as the big trends shaping the market right now?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think there are a few key things that I would call out when we think about the future of consolidation, direction of travel, what's kind of around the corner, and thinking about the customers, prospects, organizations that I've been speaking to recently. I think some of the key drivers that come out are move to the cloud. So how can organizations exploit cloud technology? A lot of IT kind of push now is cloud first, is almost the direction of travel. So it's embracing that and the flexibility that that brings. I think there's also a lot of regulatory impacts. So when we look just outside of the pure production of your stat management accounts in the context of consolidation, there's regulatory impacts around the corner in terms of changes afoot from sustainability, from tax as well. And whilst they're not kind of, core, let's say, disciplines of finance, I think what we're seeing is that those boundaries are flexing a little bit, and the finance organization is taking on more responsibility. I think some of the other things that jump out to me are some of the more traditional ones. So there's still organizations out there who need to future-proof themselves against the fact that they're highly acquisitive by nature, and therefore they've got a multi-ERP landscape. So a kind of EPM or CPM solution that's modern can be that layer that sits on top of all of those different systems and brings insights. So I think there's still that kind of utopia and recognition, if you like, that an EPM solution can bring insights across all of your systems landscape, regardless of what your footprint looks like.
Yeah, that's always been a big advantage of CPM, doing consolidation through CPM or EPM, Enterprise Performance Management, compared to going the general ledger route. I mean, we think by the end of the decade, it will be sort of half and half. Essentially, those who are more homogeneous businesses can definitely accommodate a GL approach, whereas everybody else who's got a mix of operations around the world, it's sometimes difficult to achieve that through a GL approach. One of the things that remains near the top of the list is really now the need, because of the move to more non-financial data and merging operational and financial data. The trend seems to me to be towards more granular and varied data sources. What implications does that have for the design and operation of a consolidation system? How should finance functions future-proof the initial configuration, if you like, or ongoing configuration of a consolidation system?
Yeah, it's definitely a big consideration nowadays, because I think that if you look you go back 5-10 years, the data sources that we were faced with, it was a lot more of a kind of known quantity, whereas now we're trying to almost second guess what regulation is going to bring and how we accommodate that into our core data model. So I think when it comes to the selection or implementation of a solution, regardless of that tool, flexibility is key. So extensibility of the data model is going to be really, really important. Are you in a position that you can add new dimensions when required, new data sets when required? You have flexibility around your hierarchies. Stuff like that is going to make a big difference. And if you've got kind of workflow to go on top, then you're in a strong position to kind of orchestrate all of these different data collection processes across, for instance, budget and forecast and actuals, and then starting to throw in tax, ESG, etc. You've got a solid base. I think the other thing that jumps out to me when we talk about varied data sources is ingestion of data. So how do we kind of get ahead of that, assuming that we're going to be taking data from multiple ERPs, maybe even needing to source data from data warehouses now, depending on IT strategies internally. So I think a strong API capability is also really, really critical. I'm seeing a lot of organizations traditionally would have probably turned to connectors but the problem is they're quite narrow because they're focused on one particular ERP at a time, for argument's sake. Whereas now with an open API network and REST APIs, that gives a lot more flexibility to the customer in terms of ingesting data, I think.